As much as we love Genshin's newest upcoming characters, there's always some kind of a catch, and in this video, I will investigate the whole situation. So let's first talk about the biggest upcoming change in Genshin. Kaveh and Baizhu are both going to be released in 3.6 update, and because of this, I think starting the conversation as early as possible is kind of important, since there's a lot that needs to be considered. Obviously, I cannot talk about stuff that's not official yet, but some of the things that need to be considered are actually relevant right now. So first of all, Genshin has been pumping out Dendro characters pretty consistently, and over the past half a year since 3.0 update, there's already 6 Dendro characters with Traveler included, or 8 once Baizhu and Kaveh get added in 3.6 update. Now, the funny thing about this is that it only took half a year for Dendro to reach the same amount of characters as Geo, so clearly, Hoyoverse are focusing on fully fleshing out this element as fast as possible. But here's the thing, what exactly are we missing right now when it comes to Dendro? This is actually something I've been asking myself ever since I saw Baizhu and Kaveh announced, because while this element is super flexible, I feel like it's almost fully complete with the current roster we have. Well, okay, that's not entirely true, because Burgeon still seems to be getting carried by Toma, and some few other offbeat comps like Burgeon Diluc and Dia, I guess, but having a Dendro unit to enhance Burgeon would be nice. However, if we look at the current roster of Dendro characters, we can already start to see them overlapping. For example, Alhaitham is mainly played as an on-field Dendro damage dealer, but the same could be done with Nahida, who can also provide insane off-field support, something that Alhaitham is lacking. The Dendro Archon also boosts elemental mastery by 250, and she can be utilized in comps like Burning Melt. So clearly, when it comes to flexibility, Nahida can do more than Alhaitham, and yet, they can also work together super well, which is a great way for players to build strong teams. Still, this is an exception right now, because if we look at Tignati, similar to Alhaitham, he has almost non-existent off-field support, and he isn't even an on-field driver, but a quick swap damage dealer. At first, most of us assumed he will be utilized in quick and team comps, so he can deal strong spread reaction damage. However, utilizing Bloom and using Tignari is also a great way to build a team. Finally, when it comes to the 4 stars, Kale is the only one who seems lackluster, but even then, by the current Abyss meta standards, you can still use her in basically all Dendro comps, like Burgeon, Hyperbloom, and even Nilo Bountiful Blooms. Sure, her Boomerang has a mind of its own, and her Burst has an idiotic ICD restriction, but she still works at the end of the day. It's not like she's unusable. On the other hand, Yao Yao, who recently came out, was a healer first and Dendro second, or at least that's something we thought of initially, and now, she's actually a pretty insane 4-star Dendro support. I was even wrong about her utility in comps like Hyperbloom, since her Dendro application isn't that huge, but once you start using her in comps that have no on-field driver, she can sort of become a driver herself and keep unleashing her burst, which adds enough Dendro application and also keeps the team alive. So this particular Hyperbloom team with Yao Yao has been a delight for me to use. And of course, who can forget the Dendro Traveler, or DMC? Seriously, you can basically accomplish anything with DMC when it comes to a Dendro team. While Nahida is a superior choice, DMC is free, and right when 3.0 dropped, I've been using the Traveler in so many of my teams before I acquired Nahida. Even now, if I want a reliable off-field Dendro application, I would consider Dendro Traveler for the job when running 2 teams in the Abyss. So with all that being said, you can see for yourself that with just 6 characters, almost every aspect of Dendro has been covered. We've got on-field, off-field quick swap damage dealers, there's also healers, and almost every single team comp that's not Burgeon is fully fleshed out by this point. So now that that's established, let's talk about these 2 new Dendro units that are coming out soon. So if Dendro is almost fully complete, what could we want from someone like Baizhu and Kaveh? Well, for starters, if talking about Baizhu, hopefully his burst won't be just throwing Chi-Chi at the enemy. But seriously, since this guy is all about medicine, I wouldn't be surprised to finally see a 5-star Dendro healer. However, is that something worth giving up your Primogems for? Yao Yao, Kokomi, and even Barbara can take care of this in most Dendro team comps. However, if besides healing, Baizhu can offer good Dendro application, especially if it can be done off-field, then things definitely become more interesting. Since anytime you can deal damage with a character when they are switched out, that means you have a lot more freedom when it comes to busted team comps. Just look at Yelan. Everyone called her a 5-star Xingqiu, and we even compared them to each other first, but the reality is, combining them together would prove to be an insane combo, so if Nahida can already apply off-field Dendro damage, and Baizhu could do the same, this could become an interesting core for several comps. Now, when it comes to Kaveh, I don't know, assuming he is a 4-star character, since Hoyoverse wouldn't release 2 5-star Dendro characters in a single update, I think he will probably probably be scrutinized more than usual. And that's because Kale is a free 4-star unit you can get, DMC is also free, and Yao Yao, you could obtain her for free during Lantern Rite Festival. Basically, all 4-star Dendro characters are free, so unless Hoyoverse pulls a fast one and also makes it so that Kaveh is available for free, then it will be different, but for now, it's a pretty tough competition for a new 4-star Dendro character, since Yao Yao and Dendro Traveler do their jobs really well. But one way I guess to make Kaveh stand out would be to allow him to become an on-field damage dealer, since this role is kinda best utilized right now with only Alhaitham or Nahida, who are both 5 stars. So a lower rarity Dendro character who can be on-field could be a great way to freshen up the current game's meta. Honestly, with the way Dendro works, it's hard for new Dendro characters to suck, but at the same time, why build more of them if the element is so strong? One obvious answer would be, you haven't built any of the existing Dendro characters yet, which is totally fine. More options to choose from. The other thing that I personally think is more important would be, what kind of a niche can these new Dendro characters fill out? Have you ever noticed how Anemo never really got a good crowd controller after Kazuha, even though that's how most of us perceive this element? Heizo's grouping is an afterthought, and the focus was put on his raw Anemo damage, while Farazan is just there to boost Anemo damage, and the grouping only works after unlocking her C6, but even then, it's nowhere close as good as Venti's, Sucrose's, or Kazuha's grouping. There's only so much you can do around the major feature of the element. I mean, heck, Mika, who's Cryo, is basically going to be a booster for physical damage dealers, and it seems like Hoyoverse is starting to lean towards Cryo as an element that focuses on carrying the physical damage aspect. Point is, Baizhu and Kaveh will need to stand out in some kind of a way, because just applying Dendro or doing damage is no longer the norm. 6 characters we have right now already pretty much can provide this in any team comp. Still, I am excited to see how these 2 new Dendro characters will turn out. One final thing I wanted to talk about would be the scary presence of Nahida. I'm not sure if you've noticed this yourself, but when I was making a video about top Dendro teams based on Chinese community data, I noticed the extremely high usage rate of Nahida. She's basically everywhere. Any Dendro team you can think of, Nahida will fit in. And again, it's because her off-field Dendro application is so good, and the fact she also gives a massive boost to EM makes it hard to consider pretty much any other Dendro character besides her. Unless it's Alhaitham who benefits from double Dendro comps, you can just run Nahida in Burgeon, Hyperbloom, Nilo comps, and call it a day. Seriously, if all you want is a single Dendro team to use in Abyss, while the other can be anything else, then Nahida is the only one you need. So living in her shadow is going to be scary for Baizhu, at least in my opinion. But honestly, I wouldn't put too much thought into this. Yes, Nahida right now is an undisputed best choice for basically any Dendro team. After all, she's the Archon of this element. But I would still think that just because there's a really good 5-star Dendro unit in the game, doesn't mean you have to set aside anyone else you might be interested in. First of all, most of us are playing Genshin since day 1, and this Orochimaru-like fellow has been in our lives for the most part. I personally want to get Baizhu just because he's Chi-Chi's caretaker, and he seems like an interesting character lore-wise. So this might be one of those times where I just have a preference for a character purely out of emotional attachment, even if he wasn't really there in any major story arcs, or at least not that I remember. I mean, the more mysterious the character, the cooler he is, right? But anyway, just to quickly summarize my thoughts on this video, I think Dendro right now is in a really good spot. People can go for really strong free 4-star options, and the 5 stars we had so far each fulfill a strong role. Nahida obviously is coming out on the top here, so when Baizhu and Kaveh come out, if you're the type of player who values character strength and their place in the meta around the Abyss, I will be the first one to let you know how they both hold up, because new Dendro characters that are coming out, in my opinion, should be treated with a bit more caution if we want to make sure we can have a healthy diversity of characters. But that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching the video, and I would appreciate if you could press the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for your support, and see you next time.